Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer's portrayal of Doc Holliday in Tombstone is a study in physical and psychological transformation, a role that demanded he embody not just a man, but an entire era fading into dust. Holliday is introduced as a Southern gentleman turned gunslinger, his elegance rotting under the weight of tuberculosis and regret. Kilmer didn't simply act sick, he recreated the exhaustion of decay from the inside out. He sought a dead dialect, the voice of the Southern aristocracy that perished after the Civil War. Working with dialect coach Tim Monick, Kilmer studied a rare recording of a Georgian theater restorer who spoke in the slow, deliberate rhythm of a lost world. That cadence, eerily languid and ghostly, became Holliday's signature sound, every word a whisper from a man halfway between life and death. Kilmer also used physical torment to channel his character's decline. During Holliday's deathbed scenes, the art department filled the bed with blocks of ice, and Kilmer lay on them during takes to induce shivering and physical strain. This wasn't about suffering for show, it was about authenticity. The icy pain caused his muscles to stiffen and his breathing to falter, the same fragility that defines Holliday's slow collapse. It's what gives those final scenes their haunting realism, when he mutters,
"I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game."
His voice trembles like a dying ember rather than a boast. What made the performance even more powerful was how fully Kilmer disappeared into the role. Co-star Michael Biehn once said, "I know Doc Holliday, but I don't know Val Kilmer." That separation between actor and character mirrored Holliday's own disconnection from the world, a man out of time, too intelligent and too doomed to fit in. Kilmer's Doc isn't just a gunslinger, he's a poet of death, dancing between charm and decay. The ice, the accent, the trembling humor, all of it fuses into one of cinema's most haunting sidekick performances, a dying man who somehow steals the entire film from its hero. Donkey. Donkey in the Shrek franchise is not just comic relief, he is the emotional heartbeat that keeps the story alive. Eddie Murphy's performance turned what could have been a background companion into the film's motor, loud, lovable, and endlessly loyal. Recording the voice of Donkey required immense stamina. Murphy described the sessions as, like running a marathon with your mouth. He recorded for hours in a booth, maintaining non-stop energy and manic enthusiasm until he would leave with headaches. This intensity shows in every frame. Donkey never runs out of words, songs, or optimism. His voice bursts with rhythm and musicality, powered by Murphy's instinct for timing and improvisation. Murphy's approach relied heavily on improvisation. About 10% of his ad-libbed lines were kept in the final cuts, yet those were often the most memorable. When Donkey shouts,
"No! Oh, this is gonna be fun! We can stay up late, swapping manly stories, and in the morning, I'm making waffles."
or hums "On the Road Again" as Shrek stomps ahead in silence.
"No, well, can I hum it?"
All right.
Those moments weren't written, they were born in the booth. It's this spontaneity that makes the character feel so alive. Murphy even earned a BAFTA nomination for his work, a first for a purely voiceover performance, proving that animation could hold its own against live-action acting. Donkey's role goes beyond laughter. He challenges Shrek's isolation, constantly forcing him to open up. Their friendship begins when Shrek rescues Donkey from guards at a marketplace, a moment staged like a slave auction, which later sparked deep cultural discussion. Scholars have examined how Donkey's personality, speech patterns, and humor reflect aspects of black performance in American cinema. Yet Murphy's interpretation refuses to let the character be reduced to stereotype. Donkey is the first one to see beauty in the ugly, to love fearlessly, and to speak truth without fear. Through that voice, loud, soulful, and relentlessly human, Murphy reshaped what an animated sidekick could be. Alfred J. Pennyworth. Alfred Pennyworth is the thread that binds every version of Batman together, the quiet soul who turns chaos into order and tragedy into purpose. His on-screen legacy has two defining eras: Michael Gough's sardonic butler of the late 80s and 90s, and Michael Caine's tough love mentor of the 21st century. Each actor reflected the tone of his Gotham perfectly, one gothic and theatrical, the other grounded and bruised. Michael Gough, who portrayed Alfred across 4 films from 1989 to 1997, became the emotional glue of a constantly changing franchise. His Alfred is dignified but sharp-tongued, his dry humor cutting through the absurdity of a man who dresses as a bat. In Batman Returns, when Bruce broods in silence, Gough's Alfred delivers a perfectly timed quip about taking the suit for dry cleaning. Beneath the wit lies unshakable loyalty, a servant who sees the madness but stays anyway. Gough's portrayal, laced with irony and compassion, defined the archetype of the wise but weary manservant, the steady heartbeat in a world of neon villains and operatic heroes. When Christopher Nolan rebooted the series, realism demanded reinvention. Michael Caine reimagined Alfred as a soldier turned guardian, not a refined domestic, but a man forged by war. Caine gave the butler an origin story, a former SAS sergeant wounded in battle, later hired by Thomas Wayne because he was the toughest butler he could find. That military past explains why this Alfred patches wounds, builds tech, and lectures Bruce with the authority of a commander. His accent, borrowed from Caine's own army sergeant, grounds the performance in authenticity. Caine's Alfred does more than serve. He feels, He warns. He breaks. In The Dark Knight Rises, when he confesses,
I'm so sorry. I failed you.
it's not the voice of a servant, it's the voice of a father watching his son destroy himself. Between Gough's aristocratic poise and Caine's bruised humanity lies the complete anatomy of Alfred Pennyworth, the butler who became Batman's conscience, and, in many ways, his last link to sanity. Tommy DeVito in Goodfellas is chaos in a tailored suit, a man who laughs one moment and kills the next. Joe Pesci's performance captures the volatile essence of organized crime better than any scene of blood or betrayal could. The character, based on real-life mobster Thomas DeSimone, was supposed to be young, tall, and broad-shouldered. Pesci was not. When the studio initially rejected him for being too old, Pesci fought back, literally. He argued his way into another chance, hired a makeup artist to make himself look younger, and filmed a self-produced audition reel. That stubbornness, that unwillingness to be dismissed, became the foundation of Tommy's on-screen personality. Small, loud, and impossible to ignore. The defining scene,
Well, I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
wasn't scripted. It came from a real encounter Pesci had years earlier while working as a waiter, when a gangster took offense to being called funny. Scorsese saw dramatic gold in that anecdote and encouraged Pesci and Ray Liotta to improvise it during rehearsal. Then, he didn't warn the other actors at the table. Their confusion and fear on camera are genuine. The stunned silence when Tommy's tone shifts from playful to murderous is pure realism. It's not just acting, it's emotional entrapment caught on film. Throughout the movie, Pesci balances charm and terror with surgical precision. One second, he's dancing with friends in a bar. The next, he's executing a young waiter for speaking out of turn. That contrast, childish insecurity wrapped in lethal confidence, is what makes Tommy unforgettable. When Pesci won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, his acceptance speech was only 5 words long. "It's my privilege. Thank you." It was the shortest in Oscar history. The perfect echo of a man who did all his talking through violence. Short Round. Short Round is one of cinema's most memorable child sidekicks. Brave, loyal, and bursting with spirit, beside Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. Yet behind that charm lies a story of luck, mentorship, and the shifting lens of cultural representation. Quan didn't even plan to audition. He had gone with his younger brother to a casting call, only to be spotted by the casting director while coaching him. Quan's natural confidence landed him the role, a Vietnamese refugee suddenly thrust into the heart of Hollywood. For a boy who had fled Saigon and lived in a refugee camp, stepping onto a massive adventure set was surreal. He later called it one of the happiest times of my life. His chemistry with Harrison Ford became the emotional core of Temple of Doom. Their bond wasn't manufactured, it was built through genuine care. During the filming of the intense minecart chase, Quan grew frightened and began to cry. Ford stopped everything, knelt beside him, and promised, "Key, I will never hurt you." That simple act of reassurance shaped their on-screen connection. Ford even taught Quan how to swim during production, a gesture that turned into a lifelong memory. The warmth of that real relationship glows in every frame, especially in the scene where Short Round protects a hypnotized Indy by shouting,
Indy, I love you! Wake up! Wake up!
Decades later, however, critics began re-examining the film through a modern lens. Short Round's broken English, exaggerated expressions, and subservience reflected the stereotypes common in 1980s Hollywood. Some saw him as a caricature, others as a rare, heroic Asian presence in a genre that often excluded people of color. The truth lies between those poles. Short Round was a child caught between representation and reduction, both an icon of childhood courage and a symbol of how far the industry still had to go. When Quan returned to the Oscars in 2023 to win Best Supporting Actor for Everything Everywhere All at Once, he hugged Harrison Ford on stage. It wasn't just a reunion, it was closure. The sidekick had come full circle, proving that the boy who once chased fortune and glory had found something even greater, his place in film history. Dr. John Watson. Dr. John Watson's rebirth in Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes films transformed one of literature's most misunderstood companions into an equal partner. For decades, Watson had been depicted as a bumbling assistant, a well-meaning tag-along who existed mainly to make Holmes look smarter. Jude Law, under Ritchie's direction, set out to correct that image. Drawing directly from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original texts, Law built a Watson who was sharp, skilled, and deeply human, a military doctor with grit under his polished exterior. His Watson was a man of action, someone who could throw a punch, shoot straight, and keep up with Holmes both intellectually and physically. Law's preparation centered on grounding Watson in realism. He studied the medical practices and battlefield experiences of British Army surgeons from the Second Afghan War, the conflict that defined Watson's backstory. This informed his posture, his composure, and his subtle physical caution, traits of a man who's seen violence but doesn't advertise it. Law's Watson isn't simply a narrator, he's a soldier recovering from trauma, masking it with discipline and wit. That nuance emerges in moments like the slow-motion brawl inside a London boxing den. What truly anchors this version is the chemistry between Law and Robert Downey Jr. Their partnership reshaped the dynamic into what critics dubbed a bromance, though it's more accurately the portrait of two dysfunctional geniuses who can't exist without one another. Behind the scenes, the actors improvised constantly, rewriting dialogue, reworking blocking, and infusing scenes with banter pulled from Conan Doyle's original phrasing. That spontaneity built a relationship that felt lived in, prickly, and real. By giving Watson competence and backbone, Law elevated the entire narrative. Holmes was no longer a solitary genius talking down to a fool. He was a brilliant detective collaborating with an equal. The result is a friendship that defines the modern interpretation of Sherlock Holmes. Two men bound by intellect, addiction to danger, and mutual respect. Hermione Granger. Hermione Granger's evolution on screen mirrors Emma Watson's own coming of age. Both grew from eager students into icons of intelligence and conviction. When casting began for the first film, Watson was only 9 years old. Her only acting experience came from school plays. Out of thousands of hopefuls, she was chosen after 8 grueling auditions. J.K. Rowling herself insisted she was perfect from the first screen test. Over the next decade, Watson lived inside Hermione's world, filming while studying on set for 5 hours a day, growing up under the pressure of global fame. After Goblet of Fire, she nearly quit the franchise, terrified of losing herself to it. Yet she stayed, realizing she could not separate her own identity from Hermione's. From the very start, Watson brought intensity to every scene. Critics noticed immediately that she stole the show in The Philosopher's Stone. Her sharp delivery and nervous precision turned what could have been a sidekick into the series' moral anchor. As the films matured, so did she. Hermione's transition from a rule-bound overachiever to a fierce, independent fighter paralleled Watson's own confidence as an actress. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, her punch to Draco Malfoy's face drew cheers in theaters worldwide.
Malfoy, you okay? Let's go! Quick! Don't run! Not a word to anyone, understood?
That felt good.
A moment that redefined her not just as the smartest witch of her age, but as the most courageous. By the later films, Hermione wasn't a supporting character. She was the backbone of the trio, the one who always had the spell, the plan, or the nerve to act when the boys faltered. Off-screen, Emma Watson extended Hermione's ideals into real life. After the series ended, she became a UN Women Goodwill Ambassador and a leading voice in the He for She campaign for gender equality. Her outspoken support for transgender rights put her at odds with Rowling, who felt publicly rejected by her former cast. Yet fans overwhelmingly sided with Watson, seeing her as the true heir to Hermione's spirit. In a sense, Watson didn't just play Hermione. She inherited her. The line between actress and character blurred until they became the same person, both brilliant, principled, and unafraid to fight for what is right. Silent Bob. Silent Bob is one of the most unusual sidekicks in cinema, a man defined not by what he says, but by the silence between everyone else's noise. Played by writer-director Kevin Smith, he isn't a secondary character in someone else's story, he's the creator's own reflection, hidden in plain sight. The character first appeared in Clerks, Smith's 1994 debut, which he financed by maxing out credit cards and selling his comic book collection. The film, shot in black and white, in the convenience store where he actually worked, introduced audiences to Jay and Silent Bob, two loitering slackers whose foul-mouthed antics became the heartbeat of the View Askew universe. Silent Bob's stillness was born from necessity. Smith couldn't afford professional actors, so he took the smaller role to avoid memorizing long dialogue. Yet that limitation evolved into his defining trait, where Jay, played by Jason Mewes, is manic, crude, and unstoppable. Bob is motionless, his silence amplifying every chaotic word around him. The character appears as comic relief, but he functions as something deeper, the calm observer, the one who speaks only when it matters. When he finally does, his words are almost sacred. In Chasing Amy, he breaks silence with a monologue about lost love.
She doesn't feel that she's done anything wrong. I'm like, oh really? That's when I look her straight in the eye, I tell her it's over. I walk.
The entire film freezes, listening. It's a moment of raw sincerity amid absurdity, a creator revealing his soul through his alter ego. Smith based Silent Bob on his father, Donald Smith, who was born with a cleft palate and spoke very little because of it. Their relationship revolved around watching movies together in silence. That quiet bond became the emotional blueprint for Bob. In a sense, every time Silent Bob offers wisdom, it's Kevin Smith channeling his father's strength and restraint. Across films like Mallrats, Dogma, and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the character acts as both witness and conscience, grounding Smith's chaotic cinematic world in empathy. He may rarely speak, but when he does, he speaks with the weight of an entire universe. If you like this analysis, you'll love where I go next. Click the video on your screen and find out.